I never thought owning a quiet little home just outside the neighborhood line would turn into a legal nightmare. But that's exactly what happened when the HOA next door decided I was living too close for comfort. That's right, I wasn't even part of the HOA. No dues, no meetings, no say in their rules. Still, that didn't stop one woman, who we'll just call Karen, from coming after me with everything she had. Her claim that my yard, my mailbox, even my paint color somehow violated her HOA standards. And get this, she actually filed a lawsuit against me, a person who isn't even in the HOA. At first, I thought it was just a misunderstanding. Maybe she didn't know where the HOA boundary really ended. So I tried to talk it out. I stayed polite. I showed her the property line, the documents, everything. But she wasn't interested in facts-only control. And once the HOA board backed her up, it became clear. This wasn't a mistake. It was a power move. They thought I'd back down. They thought I couldn't afford the fight. But what they didn't know was that I had one simple trick that would tear her entire case apart in just 3 minutes. A trick buried deep in county records that no one on their team even bothered to check. The courtroom was silent as I pulled out the one document that changed everything. What happened next left Karen frozen in her seat, and the judge. Let's just say he didn't waste any time making his decision. So, how did a homeowner with no HOA ties beat an aggressive board at their own game and walk away without paying a cent? Stick around, because I'm going to show you exactly how. I flipped the case upside down with one piece of paper and a whole lot of patience. It all started about 6 months ago, right after I moved into my new place. It's a quiet street, tucked just outside the boundary of a large, well-known HOA community. I picked the location for a reason: no HOA rules, no restrictions, and the freedom to live without someone constantly telling me what color my shutters should be. But apparently, that freedom rubbed someone the wrong way. Karen, who lives 2 doors down inside the HOA, didn't like that I was disrupting the neighborhood aesthetic, as she put it. First, it was passive-aggressive comments. Then, little notes taped to my mailbox. And before I knew it, she was threatening to report me to the board. At first, I didn't think much of it. I didn't belong to her HOA, so what could she possibly do? But she wasn't bluffing. 2 weeks later, I got served. A real lawsuit. Karen, backed by her HOA's legal team, was claiming that I was still subject to their covenants because my property was once included in an early phase of their development plans that were never actually approved. She dug up old maps, found vague language in ancient filings, and tried to twist it all into a legal case. I could feel the stress building. I didn't have the money for drawn-out legal battles, and frankly, I didn't want to be spending my weekends researching HOA law. But I also wasn't about to let someone bully me out of my home. The whole thing started to feel personal. Karen wasn't just enforcing some rule, she was trying to make an example out of me and the HOA. They were more than happy to go along with it, probably worried I'd set a precedent. Little did they know, while they were digging through old documents trying to trap me, I had quietly found one that would change everything. The deeper I looked into the mess Karen had stirred up, the stranger things got. I wasn't just dealing with an overzealous neighbor, I was starting to uncover a pattern. Talking with a few other homeowners near the edge of the HOA border, I learned I wasn't the first person Karen had targeted. 2 years ago, she tried something similar with a retired couple who had just repainted their fence without HOA approval, only they weren't under the HOA either. They gave up and moved out within 6 months. That's when it really hit me. This wasn't about rules. It was about control. Karen seemed to believe the entire neighborhood should fall under her version of order, whether the paperwork agreed or not. She had influence on the HOA board and wasn't afraid to use it. One of the board members, a guy named Rick, had been spotted at her house more than once. I started wondering if this was more than a personal vendetta. Maybe there was something in it for them: property values, power, even just pride at the same time. My lawyer friend Casey helped me dig through old county plats and zoning records. That's when we noticed discrepancies: maps that were updated but never recorded, drafts that showed my lot was excluded from the HOA from day one. But Karen's team was smart. They built their case around vague language and assumptions, hoping I wouldn't challenge them. Meanwhile, my daily life turned into a constant battle. Karen would report me to code enforcement for imaginary violations: trash cans left out too long, grass too tall by an inch, even the wrong color mulch. I started documenting everything: photos, emails, timestamps. Every move I made was under a microscope. And it was exhausting. But the more pressure they put on me, the more determined I became. Because I knew, once I revealed the one document they all missed, their whole case would crumble. They just didn't see it coming. As the court date approached, the tension in my world grew heavier by the day. Every interaction with Karen felt like a battle of wills, and the HOA board seemed more determined than ever to make an example out of me. I kept hearing whispers from neighbors about how Karen had strong connections with local officials and Mises, and how the HOA had a reputation for pushing boundaries to protect their interests. It was clear this wasn't just about a property line, it was a power struggle. And I was stuck in the middle. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from the HOA's lawyer, each one more aggressive than the last. They demanded I remove certain things from my yard, pay fines, and even threatened additional legal fees if I didn't comply. But I stood my ground. I wasn't about to give in to a group that was trying to extend control beyond their limits. My lawyer friend Casey and I reviewed every piece of evidence they sent, preparing to dismantle their claims one by one. At the same time, Karen's hostility escalated. I caught her eyeing my property during neighborhood events, and once, she even tried to corner me at a local store to warn me off. It was unsettling, but it only strengthened my resolve. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about standing up to an unfair system that was weaponizing HOA rules to bully people outside their reach. Finally, the day of the hearing arrived. The courtroom felt tense, charged with the weight of everything that had happened. Karen sat with a smug look, confident that the judge would side with her. The HOA's legal team came prepared with stacks of documents, maps, and detailed arguments designed to confuse and intimidate. But I had my secret weapon, the one piece of proof that would shake everything to its core. As I stood there, waiting for my moment to speak, the air was thick with anticipation. Everyone was waiting to see if the little guy could really take on the HOA and whether justice would finally be served. Just when I thought things couldn't get more intense, the judge asked a question that caught everyone off guard. He wanted to see proof that the HOA had actually recorded the boundaries they were claiming. Karen's lawyer fumbled, pulling out maps and documents, but none of them were officially filed with the county. It was as if the HOA was trying to enforce rules on land they couldn't legally prove belonged to them. The room buzzed with murmurs, and Karen's confident smile started to fade. But then came the real shocker. As I handed over the document I'd been holding onto the official county record, showing my property was explicitly excluded from the HOA's jurisdiction, Karen's lawyer suddenly objected, claiming it was inadmissible because it was an unauthorized copy. The judge paused, glancing between us, clearly skeptical. Suddenly, the courtroom doors swung open, and in walked a man I hadn't expected to see. Rick, the HOA board member who'd been rumored to have ties to Karen. His expression was tense, almost guilty. He approached the bench and quietly handed the judge a set of sealed documents. Whispers spread. What was this new evidence? Why was a board member interfering now? The judge asked for a moment to review the papers privately. The whole room fell silent, the weight of anticipation nearly unbearable. Was this going to be a counterattack that would crush my case? Or would it expose something even deeper about the HOA's tactics? I could feel my heart pounding. What started as a simple fight over property lines had spiraled into something much bigger, an unraveling of secrets, power plays, and legal loopholes that could change the entire neighborhood. Forever, the stakes had just skyrocketed, and the outcome was more uncertain than ever. The judge took his time going through the documents Rick had handed over, and I could feel the tension in the room tighten like a rope ready to snap. When he finally looked up, his expression was unreadable. Then, in a calm but firm voice, he asked Karen's lawyer if they had any official recorded documents proving the HOA's claim over my property. The silence that followed was deafening. No such records existed. That was the moment everything started to unravel. The judge ruled that without properly recorded boundaries, the HOA had no legal standing to enforce their rules on my property. Karen's entire case collapsed in front of everyone. Relief washed over me, but just as I thought the fight was over, the judge raised one more eyebrow and asked Rick to explain why he had just submitted those sealed documents to everyone's surprise. Rick admitted the papers contained internal HOA emails revealing the board's strategy. They had intentionally avoided officially recording certain boundary lines to keep more control over neighboring properties without the legal hassle. Worse, those emails showed a plan to pressure homeowners just outside the HOA to either move or comply without question. The courtroom gasped. Karen's aggressive pursuit wasn't just personal, it was part of a calculated effort to expand the HOA's influence unlawfully. The judge didn't just dismiss the lawsuit. He ordered an investigation into the HOA's practices and warned them that any further harassment would lead to penalties. As the room emptied, Karen avoided my gaze. Rick looked embarrassed but said nothing. I realized this fight wasn't just about me anymore. It was about standing up to unfair power and setting a precedent for others. But here's the twist. Right after the hearing, I got a call from another neighbor living outside the HOA but facing similar issues. Turns out, Karen's reach might be wider than I thought. And the battle, it might just be beginning. After the judge's ruling, things slowly started to change. The HOA board couldn't ignore the official investigation, and the pressure was on them to clean up their act. Karen, once so confident and aggressive, seemed to back off completely. I no longer received threatening letters or visits from code enforcement about made-up violations. For the first time in months, I felt like I could truly enjoy my home without looking over my shoulder. What surprised me most was how many neighbors reached out afterward, thanking me for standing up to the HOA's overreach. Some had quietly suffered the same kind of harassment but didn't know their rights or thought they had no chance against the board. Together, we started talking, sharing information, and even planning to keep watch on future HOA actions. It became clear that this wasn't just a one-person fight. It was about making sure no one else would be bullied for simply living their lives outside unfair boundaries. Looking back, the whole experience taught me a lot about the power dynamics in neighborhoods and how important it is to know your property rights. It also showed me how fear and control can creep into places where people just want to feel safe and comfortable. If there's one thing I want anyone watching this to take away, it's that you don't have to be intimidated by an HOA or anyone trying to overstep legal boundaries. Knowledge is your best weapon. While Karen's case was officially over, I'm keeping an eye on the neighborhood, ready to stand up if needed. Because sometimes one person's stand can spark a bigger change. And that's exactly what happened here. Thanks for following my story. If you ever find yourself in a similar situation, remember, fight smart, stay calm, and don't let anyone take away your right to call a place home.